Hey everybody, so we have some very unfortunate injury news to report out of Pittsburgh today, as Sidney Crosby is expected to miss a minimum of 6 weeks after undergoing surgery to repair a core muscle tear. So the Penguins will now be without their best player, their captain, and one of the best players in the entire NHL, basically until New Year's at this point. Before we get into the video, I just quickly want to remind everyone to please hit that like button down below and give this video a thumbs up, as that greatly helps out the channel. And if you're new and happen to be watching, please hit that subscribe button and follow along for all my hockey content this season and all year round. So, Sidney Crosby, obviously one of the top players in the entire NHL, a very, very important player for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and now he is going to miss significant time this season with injury. Like I said, at least 6 weeks, possibly longer. And I'll tell you right now, the Pittsburgh Penguins did not need this. Now, luckily for the Penguins, both Evgeny Malkin and Nick Bjugstad are back in the lineup. They both missed significant time earlier this season with injuries. And had those two still been out and this Crosby injury happened, Pittsburgh would be at a point where they would almost have to go out and make a move to get a center, because they would be down their top 3 centers. However, that is not the case. Both Malkin and Bjugstad have returned. However, losing Sidney Crosby, losing your top player like that is never easy, and not going to be something that's easy to overcome. Evgeny Malkin now likely slots in as the top-line center, or he will slot in as the top-line center. Nick Bjugstad could potentially move up to be play second line, or they could keep Bjugstad on the third line and move Jared McCann from the wing to the middle and have Jared McCann play the second-line center role. They've got options there. Alex Galchenyuk is another player who has played center in the past, can play wing also. He possibly could get moved to the middle, although I think it's more likely to see McCann get moved to the middle than Galchenyuk. But either way, Pittsburgh's down a center here and down a very, very important player. And this is not going to be something that's going to be, easily overcome by them, as anytime you lose a player of Sidney Crosby's, magnitude, that's a huge hit to your lineup. And I have no doubt that Evgeny Malkin can come in and play a top-line center role. Obviously, he's a very, very good player in his own right. What this really hurts is your depth, because when you have Crosby and Malkin both in the lineup, that is an A-plus 1-2 punch down the middle. And then to have Nick Bjugstad as your third-line center, Pittsburgh is set down the middle when everyone is healthy. But now you take their best center out of the equation. That moves Malkin up, and that leaves a hole there in that top 6. And you can move Bjugstad up off of the third line and put him in the second line. But Bjugstad, the way that he plays, is more of a third line type guy. I don't really see him being a top 6 offensive producer. So then you have to come up with another option, and that's where they will have to move someone to the middle or go out and try and make some sort of move to get a center into through trade into their lineup. But nonetheless, this is going to hurt for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And if you look at Pittsburgh right now in the standings, they're 10-6-2, off to a decent start this season. They currently hold the first wild card spot in the Eastern Conference with 22 points. Only trailing Philadelphia, who's in third place in the Metro by 1 point, only 5 points behind the New York Islanders, who are in second place. So, Pittsburgh to this point has looked like a playoff team, has looked like, maybe not a dominant team, but certainly a good team in the Eastern Conference, and a team that was, had potential to make a playoff run this year. And, it's going to be really interesting to see what they look like going forward without Sidney Crosby in their lineup. Because not only have they lost their top-line center, they've lost their best player, they've lost their captain, they've lost, the biggest leader. Really, Sidney Crosby is the engine that makes the Pittsburgh Penguins go. He is their franchise player. And having him out of the lineup for this extended of a period is going to be a serious test for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll see if they can maintain playoff position, or at least hold their own while Crosby is out, and then maybe make a second half of the season run when Crosby comes back. Because as you look at it right now, as far as how long 6 weeks puts him out, there's 2 weeks plus a couple of days left in November. Then you've got the entire month of December. It's basically going to be New Year's before we're going to see Sidney Crosby again. I would not be surprised if he does not play a game again in the calendar year of 2019, and it might be January before he's able to come back. I guess there's a slight possibility he could be back at the very end of December, but I don't think there's really any point in rushing him at that point. I would think, it's probably going to be January before we see Crosby on the ice again. So, that's a significant amount of time, and Pittsburgh does not have an easy schedule through these next few weeks. If you take a look ahead at the Penguins' schedule here, just the rest of this week and next week, they have 5 games. 4 of them are within the division. They play New Jersey twice. Now, obviously, the Penguins are better than New Jersey, but again, divisional game, never easy. And they play the New York Islanders twice in a home and home. The Islanders are better than Pittsburgh this year, higher in the standings, and been a very, very good team to start this season. So there's 4 divisional games out of the Pittsburgh's next 5 that are not going to be easy. Oh, and who's the 5th game? The Toronto Maple Leafs on Saturday night in a couple of days. So that's not an easy game either. And Toronto is the team right behind Pittsburgh in the standings in the second wild card spot. So that's going to be a big game for them as well. So just in these next 5 games, Pittsburgh is greatly going to miss Sidney Crosby. And then beyond, as we go to the final week of November, they have to play Calgary and Vancouver, both who are off to decent starts from the Pacific Division and cross-conference play. Then they go to Columbus, a team that certainly plays Pittsburgh very hard. No matter how good or bad the Blue Jackets are, they play tough games against Pittsburgh. Then they have a back-to-back with Columbus and St. Louis, both on the road to finish out the month of November. And then we go into December where they play St. Louis again. I mean, defending Stanley Cup champion. Those are no easy games. Then they play Arizona, who's off to a pretty nice start out from the Western Conference as well. At Detroit, obviously that's more of a easier game for the Penguins. Then Montreal, Columbus again. The LA Kings, that's an easier game. Then they go on a road trip out west, at Calgary, at Edmonton, at Vancouver, at Nashville. Then home against Nashville in a home-and-home series with the Predators. Again, they're one of the top teams in the Western Conference. That won't be easy. And they close out December with a game at home against the Ottawa Senators. Now, the good news for Pittsburgh is most of their upcoming schedule is at home or not too far away as far as travel is concerned. Like at New Jersey, that's not a long trip at all. Then they're at home versus Toronto, at home versus the Islanders. They go to the Islanders, but again, that's not a long trip. Back home against New Jersey, home against Calgary, home against Vancouver. So, out of their next, what are we looking at here? Out of their next 7 games, 5 of them are at home, so they only have 2 road games in their next 7. Then they go on a short road trip at Columbus and at St. Louis, but after those 2 back-to-back road games, they come right back home to play St. Louis again and Arizona. Then they have to go to Detroit again. Pittsburgh to Detroit is not that long of a trip. And that's only a one-off road game before they come back home for 3 games against Montreal, Columbus, and LA. They're home that entire week. And then they get the road trip. So they don't have a real road trip until the middle of December 17th through 27th, when they play at Calgary, at Edmonton, at Vancouver, and at Nashville. Then they come back home for their final 2 games of December. So really, they don't have that many road games. And that is, I think, a silver lining here for Pittsburgh, is that they're going to be playing in their home rink a lot. And it's always better to play at home, but to have Crosby out and not have that leadership on the road, I think would be a little bit more of an issue if they were playing a lot of road games. But they're not. They're at home for much of the next month and a half here. So nonetheless, this is obviously a big loss for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They do not have an easy schedule going forward. They're already in a wild card spot, on that edge of playoffs versus no playoffs. And losing Sidney Crosby is a massive, massive loss. It's Sidney freaking Crosby. He's one of the best players in the league. So we're going to have to wait and see how Pittsburgh overcomes this and if they're able to continue to win games and play good hockey. They were able to keep winning without Evgeny Malkin and Nick Bjugstad earlier this season. This is a Pittsburgh team that has shown that they can be very resilient and that they don't shy away from adversity and that they can overcome things like this. But it hits another level when it's Sidney Crosby who's the one who's out, and their captain and best player. So Pittsburgh's definitely going to be a team to keep an eye on over the next few weeks while Crosby is recovering from this surgery. This is an extended absence for him, and Pittsburgh is going to have to find a way to keep winning games even without their best player. But with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.